Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Awesome Life podcast, where we love to inspire, share, give little tips to make your life more awesome. And my guests and I are here to help provide that. No question about it. And my guest today is one of those amazing people. I'm Karen Stultz, your host, and I actually pragmatic catalyst for creating that change in your life, being less of a people pleaser, less of a self-doubter, and start living your life without regret, without guilt, and really reduce the stress quite a little bit. So my guest has reduced her stress in a major way. And I want to share a little bit more here. Bear with me while I pull up her bio, because she is just absolutely amazing. She is a spirit doula, Kim Colella. She's a spirit doula, and her mission is to assist others in bringing their most authentic spirit and life, reclaim the sacred dimension of their own whole and holy self. Kim has followed her spirit's urgings. That's part of the awareness and allowing and the awesome, right? Is being aware and following the urgings that spirit gives us to embrace life in all its complexity. She's traveled to Calcutta to meet Mother Theresa. She journeyed to South Africa and witnessed AIDS pandemic, and she also assisted in over 25 women having their births and also helping transition for death. Kim has co-authored Lasting Gifts, Living with Intention. She's created a card deck called Spirit Whisperers, and she's published her memoir, Spirit Embraced, Guiding Yourself to an Authentic and Free Life. And she actually won the 2019 Nautilus Award for that book and a 2020 American Bookfest Award. So welcome, Kim. And I'm so excited that you're here. And just for our audience to know, Kim and I did just meet, but we are so similar in so many ways in the way we're thinking. So I just had to have her as a guest. That's all there was to it. Our hearts met and we followed our urgings, and we both just want to have some fun, because fun is number one. But Kim, a spirit doula. I've heard of a birth doula. I've heard of a death doula. I've heard of a life doula, but I've never heard of a spirit doula. How did that all occur?
Well, it was a journey. It was an unfolding. I spent 35 years doing massage therapy as my primary mode of work and support, financial support. Amazing, wonderful clients that I was able to journey with. Over 40% of my clients had been coming to me for over 25 years when I closed my practice. So I was able to journey with people through their births, through their deaths, through their marriages, through their divorces, through their empty nesting, all these different stages. And eventually, people started to ask me to be at their births. So I became a birth doula. And then I would get invitations to be present at death. And so I started calling myself a birth and a death doula. But people, when they would ask me just off the bat, so what do you do? And I would say, I do massage therapy. And I always felt like I was taking a picture of my big toe and saying, this is who I am. This is what I do. And so I came up with the title Spirit Doula because my mission, I knew my mission was to help bring people more fully into the world, to embody their spirit, to incarnate fully in a physical being, because that's where I feel like we're the most powerful, and then to bring that into the world with no apologies.
That
So about 12, I don't know how long it's been now that I came up with that title. And I've, it, it feels so much better now when somebody says, what do you do? Or I say, well, I'm a spirit doula, and that feels like, so often our jobs feel like just a title or whatever, but this is my life's work. This is the authenticity of my spirit is to be, to serve in the world as a spirit doula.
I love that. And yeah, indeed, when you know what you are here to do, you can embody it and you can feel it. At least I do. I feel it in my heart. When your heart is speaking and you say, yes, I am a spirit doula. Now, for me, no, that doesn't quite resonate, but I can see it in your face. And people, please do come and see this magnificent Kim on our YouTube channel. But it it is it is something that is so innate that you can say, I am. And I love your idea of your analogy, your metaphor there of looking at the big toe,
Yeah.
because I know when I was starting my work, people would say, oh, you do hypnotherapy. And I'd say yes, and a whole lot more. Oh, you do EFT? Yes, and a whole lot more. Oh, you are into essential oils? Yes, and a whole lot more.
Right.
So it is one of those things. Who am I? And you really seem to have embodied that. Um,
Yeah, I think that was there, and then I just had to find a word for it, right?
yeah,
It wasn't like I came up with the title and then embodied the title. It was more that embodied me,
mm,
right? And it
right.
and it just became like a container that I felt like I fit in. It felt
Yeah,
like home. Yeah.
yeah, that is so wonderful. Now, in your bio, you went and saw Mother Teresa in
Yeah.
India. Is that how did that happen? Did you do more than just see her? I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, yes, I went and I saw her in a stadium of 90,000 people."
Oh no, it wasn't like that at all. And it was very magical. Um, Ever since I was a little girl and heard about Mother Teresa, she became, that guiding light for me of who I wanted to be. I had dreams of going and working side by side with Mother Teresa, right? Um, and when I turned 30, I learned that there was a L'Arche community in Calcutta. And I was part of the L'Arche community here in Tacoma, Washington. And it's a community of people with developmental disabilities and those who choose to live with them as family. And the L'Arche community was really my home base here. I loved spending time there because everybody was seen as valued and having worth and having something to offer. So if you were working in L'Arche, you were called an assistant. If you were one of the people there living permanently, you were a core member. And the core members are just so beautiful and loved and honored for who they are, that I
And
loved
this is in
being there.
India, not
No, well, it's
in
in
Tacoma.
109 countries. And so we have a L'Arche community here in Tacoma that I've
Oh, okay.
been
So
a
we're
part of since I was 25. So when I turned 30, I learned that there was a L'Arche community in Calcutta, and it was built on some of Mother Teresa's land. And I decided I'm going to Calcutta. So I wrote on my calendar for March 30th that I needed $1,400 for my airline ticket. And then I went to work paying off all my bills, trying to get money in the bank, finding someone to take over my practice. And the night before, I had less than $200. And I was driving home across a beautiful bridge and thought, I'm not supposed to go. And I heard inside the voice, just wait. And the next day, my business associate went to her P.O. box and there was a check from an insurance company for me. And then I went to my P.O. box and there was a check from an insurance company for me. And then a person came in and bought 10 gift certificates, which nobody had ever done before or ever did afterwards. And nobody knew I had this goal. So it wasn't like people were trying to help me achieve it consciously. And at the end of the day, I was 82 cents short and I had $1 in my pocket and I slammed it on our desk and started jumping up and down saying, I'm going. And my business associate, Katie, said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Calcutta to meet Mother Teresa. So I went to Calcutta. We had written the L'Arche community 2 letters. They never responded because they never got them. So I decided I would go anyway, that there must be some place that would need a volunteer. And so I bought my airplane ticket. I enrolled in a yoga teacher training in Nepal because I had met this yogi at a Sacred Dance Institute in Portland, Oregon, and he had invited the whole class to come. And I'd had 3 hours of yoga, so I thought that I was in my whole life. So I thought I was ready for a teacher training that was 8.5 hours a day of yoga.
Of yoga.
Yeah, that was a crash course. And then took 2 buses and a train down to Calcutta and showed up at L'Arche's doorstep, which is magical, even finding them. And when I talked to the director and introduced myself, he sat me down and we talked for 45 minutes. And he said, Kim, we don't generally allow anyone into our community for less than 3 months. And at that point, I'd already spent a month in Nepal. So I only had 8 weeks left. And he said, but we've been praying for God to send us someone for the last 2 weeks. So I guess you're that someone. So they let me move in and I lived with them and worked with them. And then on my days off, I went to Mother Teresa's program. So my first day, I went to her home for the dying and destitute and worked for the day. And that was a dream come true. I really wanted to go to her home for the dying and destitute, and very overwhelming, very painful, and yet very beautiful. And then that night I went to her mother house for prayer. And when you go to the mother house, the volunteers are on the right side of the room. And then the nuns, which it felt like there were about 100, were on the left side. And there was a little pathway in between, an aisle. And so I sat right at the aisle in the hopes I'd get a glimpse of Mother Teresa when she came in. And she came in, walked down that aisle, and sat right across from me. There was nothing between us but like 3 feet of air.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
I did not pray at all. I stared at her and watched her and studied her and was agape at just being in her presence and was so struck at how ordinary she was. And then afterwards, she announced that confessions would be available. And I was born and raised Catholic. So I had lots of experience with confessions and really didn't like to go to confessions with people I didn't know and respect. But I had already contracted Giardia and I was living with people I couldn't understand. And I'd been invited by 2 women from Scotland I'd met that day on the street to come and have tea with them. So I said I would come after prayer. Well, then when she announced confessions were available, I left with everybody who was leaving. And they went down some steps and I found a hallway and went to the end of the hallway to have an argument as to whether I should stay for confession or whether I should go have tea. So I'm having this dialogue argument in my head. Yeah, for about 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, here comes Mother Teresa. How she knew I was there, I will never know. And she came right up to me, looked me in the eye and said, so you're going to confession? And I said, yes, Mother. And she took my arm and she walked me to the chapel and she pointed at my head and said, the line for confessions will form here. And I thought, what have I ever done to warrant needing to be ushered to confession by Mother Teresa? And then on New Year's Eve, she had 30 of us come and sit with her in the chapel and talk. She talked about her life. And I sat right at her left foot. She had huge bunions. You know, there was this much air between her and I. I'd meet her in the hallway. It was just so powerful to be with her. And again, what I will say was the most powerful is that she was so ordinary. And in my mind, I had built her up to be superhuman, and I expected her to have these beams of light coming out of her head like this, you know? And really, she was just somebody who fully embodied who she was, listened closely to what she knew she was called to do, and did it. She lived her purpose fully. And that's what made her extraordinary, but no more extraordinary than any of us are called to be.
Indeed. Indeed. Wow, what an amazing experience. And she embodies, I think that's one of the reasons that she was so listened to, is that she does embody that um, humbleness.
Mhm.
She listens and is not trying to think, how do I get this message out? How do I do this? How do I do that? What do I am listening, and she's following the little urges that show up inside.
And finding the sacred, the holy, the beauty in each and every person. You know, her home for the dying and destitute was started by her picking up somebody who was dying on the street and bringing them. And then she just kept collecting people who needed to be held and loved in their dying and honored whatever their tradition was.
So I wonder, was she one of the founders of the death doula? Would you say? I don't know.
Well, not officially, but she certainly made sure that people died surrounded by love and care.
Yeah.
Now, if you know, her home for the dying and destitute, it was not luxurious,
Mm-mm.
but people, it was luxury for someone who was dying on a curbside.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So we, with our Western eyes, could go in and say, oh, they, you know, this needs this or this or this and criticize it. But given what they had, it was the love that was being given and the respect that was being given that was more important than the surroundings.
That's true. To have an awesome life, all that we really need is love. Everything, well, what is John Lennon's song? All we need is love. It's so true. It's what's missing in so many of us. We don't love ourselves. So how can we love others?
Well, and I really believe that one of the most courageous acts that we can do is to learn to receive love. I think many of us, it's easier for us to give than to really receive, to really be seen, and to surround ourselves with people who have the capability and desire to see and know us, and that we desire to see and know them. And it's very, I think, countercultural, and it takes immense courage to allow ourselves to be loved. I found it to be um, the most terrifying experience of my life. When I got married, I called it my other Calcutta experience, because being loved and held and seen was as foreign to me as my time in Calcutta.
Mm.
And so learning to receive that, learning to settle in and accept that.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. So powerful to be able to do that. And you've written a number of books, contributed to some, and have written a memoir about that. Before we go into that, though, how did you end up in Africa with the AIDS pandemic?
Well, in 2004, I called my best friend and said, would you go to the Oprah show with me? I need to do something um, fun for my spirit because I'd suffered three big losses. Three important people had died. The last one being my mother-in-law. And I just needed to do there, uh, our house was in death energy and I needed to do something fun to revive my spirit so I didn't stay in that energy. Having no idea what it takes to go see the Oprah show. Ignorance is bliss. And of course, dear Kathy said, absolutely. She lives in Minnesota. I live in the Pacific Northwest. And so it was again a miracle. We got tickets. It it took 3 straight days of calling nonstop, hitting the repeat button to get through to get tickets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and three of us were doing that. Well,
Oh,
I
wow.
was doing it the most consistently because I got the flu, so I had a fever, and so the days that opened up that you could get tickets, the morning that they opened up, I got the flu. So I laid in bed and hit repeat and got tickets and went to the Oprah show. And that's a whole experience in itself. But I really wanted to go to a second show. And so I was sending the Oprah show all sorts of reasons why I should get tickets to another show because I was coming from so far, etc. And they never responded, of course. But while I was at the show that we did get tickets to, at the end, they announced if anybody in the audience was available the next day who had preteen or teenage children to come and talk to the producer. Well, Kathy had 4. So I was like, come on. And so they talked to her for a long time. It was going to be a story on leaving children home alone. And then they turned to me and they said, well, what about you? Do you have children? And I said, yes, but he's only 6 and I don't leave him home alone. But I was left home alone with a newborn and a 2-year-old when I was only 8.
Mm.
So then they started asking me questions about that. And in the end, they said, well, could you come tomorrow if we wanted you to? Oh, sure. And then that night in our hotel room, Kathy had a cell phone. She gets a call and she's going, oh, absolutely. Sure. Okay. And she gets off and she said, that was the producer of the Oprah show and they'd like to interview you tomorrow on the show. So they're going to send a limousine to pick us up at the museum.
Now, this is in Chicago? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and it was just a 1.5-minute interview, which ended up getting cut out of the show in the end. But on the way home, I hadn't eaten all day because I was so nervous. And I was in the airport and I was looking for something to eat. The airport in Minnesota, I had layover. And there was a woman eating a broccoli pizza. And I looked at her and I said, is that any good? She said, oh, it's very good. And I started to walk away and she said, why don't you sit down and have some with me? And I said, oh, no, I can buy my own food. And she said, no, really, I'm going to have to throw it away if you won't. And I said, okay. So I sat down with her and we started visiting. And within 10 minutes, I knew that she was on the board of the Grameen Foundation, which I deeply respect. And then she said, but my real love is taking women to South Africa and immersing them in the AIDS pandemic. And out of my mouth came, oh, I could find 10 women to do that. She hadn't asked me to go, and she hadn't asked me to find anybody. And my mouth said that, and my brain was saying, what are you talking about? You have a 6-year-old son. You guys can't afford for you to take off and go. And the next day she called and invited me to be part of a call. And 6 months later, myself and Kathy and 4 other friends or 5 other friends went to South Africa to immerse ourselves in the AIDS pandemic. And I wrote a letter at Christmas time to friends telling them what I was doing, friends and family, and asking for their support energetically and through prayer. And if they felt so inclined, that I needed to raise this much money to go. And I got 3 times the amount of money I needed to go.
Wow.
So I was able then to take that money to look at all of the places in those 16 days that we visited And then Kathy and I and another friend sat down with that money and determined which organizations would get that money and delivered it to them.
How marvelous. How absolutely marvelous. But it has all started because you were talking about children and stay-at-home children,
It
and you
all
left your child alone.
not at 6. Right. It all, though, really started, Karen, when I said yes to my spirit that was asking for me to do something fun. And as a result of that, what came to mind was I've always wanted to go to the Oprah show. That would be fun. And then, going to the airport, and then, going to South Africa. And then because of that, I was on the board of an organization here called the Tacoma Lesotho Connection. And because I was on that board when a young woman from Lesotho was coming to Tacoma for a year, they needed a host family, and we were her host family. And that was in 2010. And we just talked 2 nights ago. She named her first son after her brother, my son, Sam. And when we went to visit her in 2015, she had gotten pregnant to honor me.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that one yes to spirit, that one small yes, it's like it snowballs when we say yes to what's true for us. It just gets bigger and better and more surprising of what unfolds.
And the thing that I'm getting too is that it all started with wanting to have some fun.
Yes.
Not it's the playfulness and the letting go. Okay, I am going to do the work. I need fun. I need uh playful energetics.
Yeah.
I want to go on the Oprah show. And yeah, I'm willing to put in the time, but it does need to have this, this, and this. And I'm 6, so I can press buttons,
Yeah.
press the redial. So I will commit to pressing the redial without any expectations, but an inner knowing that if it's going to be, it's going to be, but I have to take action to do it.
Absolutely. And I think that's what's so important about, we talk about the concept of manifestation, right? And sometimes it just feels so airy fairy, right? But for me, it's working in communion with that, right? It's like we have to put in the work. It's not just going to magically show, $1 million, and this isn't just going to hit me unless I buy that ticket or do that, make that move or whatever, right? We have to work in communion with. And for me, the manifesting is most effective when it's something that's coming from deep inside, not just oh, I want a new furry jacket, right? That's fine. But it's it's not the same as when there's something calling us. There was something calling me to do something fun and to move out of that death energy. It was time. We had grieved, right? It wasn't ignoring the grief. We had grief, but now it was time to make space for joy again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like too what you did was reminding our listeners that you never know. You just never know where the next possibility is going to come from to help you and your soul, but also how you can help somebody else's soul.
Yeah.
And the opportunities show up simply by saying, gee, a broccoli pizza?
Yes. And being willing to receive, right? When she said, would you have some with me? My
First there was the automatic, no, 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 I can buy my
no,
own
I
food.
can afford my own pizza, kind of, this ego thing came up, right?
Yeah,
Oh, no,
yeah.
no, I can get my own pizza. But her just looking and smiling at me and saying, really, I'm going to have to throw it away. Well, okay. And surrendering and receiving, right?
Exactly. Oh, that is so, so, so important. And I could, I can feel that gentle spiritual energy. So your spirit doula is right there. And I feel my guides and crew around me. I'm not as gentle and spiritual as you are, but my crew is here. Your crew is there.
Absolutely. And our
Yeah.
crew is so important. And it's important for everybody to have a crew and
Yeah.
to develop their crew around them, both on the physical plane and on the spiritual plane,
And
right?
our crew on the spiritual plane is always here. We just kind of block them off.
Right. And even with them, I write each of my chapters of my book ends with a tool of transformation that I use to shift the paradigm of my life. And one of them was creating a soul council. And the first time I did that, I waited till I could have the house to myself. I put out 7 chairs because that's what the number I intuitively got. Okay, 7 looks good. Sat down with my journal and waited to see who showed up in those chairs. And Mother Teresa showed up, and Sigmund, the Egyptian god, showed up, and Alethea, speaker of truth, and Mary Magdalene, and Jesus, and Princess Diana showed up. And I was like, Princess Diana, what are you doing here? And she said, I'm here to remind you of your softness.
Oh,
And I
oh,
thought, oh, how wonderful. I need that, right?
oh.
Where Alethea, speaker of truth, and Mary Magdalene have a voice that's a little more, come on, get with the program, girl. So I utilize them all the time. And I just had a dear friend die 2 weeks ago. And I was grieving. And then all of a sudden hit me, oh, she can be part of my council now. And so I asked her to join my council, and she was a Reiki master. And I was with a client the other day. We were doing some energy healing, and felt very called to do Reiki, which is one of a few different kinds of energy work I do. And I could feel her with me and guiding me, right? So having this spiritual counsel, this spiritual, I don't know what you called them,
Yeah,
but
well, that would seem
yeah,
perfect. Yeah, your guides, your counsel, because it's kind of a all right, I need your input
yes,
and I need your guidance, not to say I'm going to follow it because I have free choice,
right.
but I need to hear different perspectives. And you're my counsel of wisdom to help me hear different perspectives. That's the way I'm interpreting it. I don't know if that's accurate.
Yeah, often I go to my counsel when I need assistance. So I'm quite uh like I wanted to take a class and I was uncertain whether I should. And
Mhm.
they were all so adamant. Like the first 3 spoke, and then I was like, okay, is there anybody who's a no? Silence. Okay, how many of you are eyes? And they all started jumping up and down. And I was like, okay, I'll take the class.
Which makes me want to get to your book now, because your book is you have information on how you created your council, which I definitely have to learn more about, because I mean I feel my crew. I don't know who you guys are, but I'm always grateful for you. Um, yeah, you know that. Anyway, it is uh neat, but tell us more about your book.
So my book has 4 sections. The
Mhm.
first section is called Release. And it can be difficult for some people to read because it talks about the things I needed to release and some of the pain from my childhood that
Mhm.
I needed to heal and release. Um, but it's also very beautiful. So I encourage people to just stay with it, even if it brings up some pain for them. The second section is called Listen, and it chronicles my time of going to Calcutta, um, and that deep listening I needed to do
Mhm.
and how that unfolded. The third part is Manifest, which chronicles the whole thing about going to the Oprah show in South Africa and Mary. And then the last section is called Tend, And what's so important to me about tend is so often we accomplish something and then we're like, what's next? Right. And when we create the desires of our heart, when we manifest those, we need to tend to them and not just rush to the next. So for
Take
me,
time.
yeah, my greatest manifestation was choosing a husband who I knew would be a magnificent father and having a child with him and watching the relationship between them is beyond anything I could have imagined as a child. Any more than, and brings me to tears of joy often, right? So tending those relationships, not getting so busy with outer world stuff that I don't make space and time. They're the first. The other stuff, you know, can't take away from. And at the same time, they can't take away from the things I know I need to do, nor do they. My husband is, when my husband and I got married, we made a commitment till death do us part. And we were very clear with one another that if our soul started to die in the relationship, that would be a death that would cause us to part. And so we walked into the marriage with a commitment to each other's souls and to each other's soul work and what we were called to do. And I think that has been the cornerstone. That has been, it's not that I think, I know that's been the cornerstone of our marriage for 29 years.
Ah, well, congratulations. That's huge.
Thank
That
you.
is absolutely huge. And tell us again the name of your book.
It's called Spirit Embraced. It's right here. Yeah. And could I just read one thing from the book?
I'd love it.
It's very short. Most of my all of my chapters end with what I call a soul psalm. And it's either what I heard Spirit saying to me or me saying to Spirit in my journals. And so one is called Singing Me a New Song. And I just wanted to share that with folks. Singing me a new song, so beautiful and true that the old slow tune of my past existence no longer resonates in this new place of myself. Breathe into me the story of my life path with such force that it takes my breath away and I gulp. I gulp in this new reality of me fully lived.
Oh, Kim, that is so beautiful.
Thank you.
That is just so beautiful. Oh, I could feel that in my heart and that gulp that takes your breath away. Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
and our
how does
own
it get better
goodness.
than this? I don't know, but I can't wait to find out.
Right. And what that's my prayer for everybody, right? That we will be so in that we will get to love and know ourselves so tenderly that we gulp in the reality of our goodness. We all know our weaknesses so well. And play those tapes about, oh, I'm not enough so much, right? But to gulp in our goodness, that's my prayer.
So beautiful. So, so beautiful. So how can people get in touch with you to your peaceful energy is so energizing.
Oh,
And
thank you.
it's just so full of grace and calm. And most of the people that hang out with me are searching for that grace and calm. So how can people get in touch with you, Kim
Through my
Colella?
website,
Oh, okay.
which is Spirit Doula, DOULA.com.
Oh,
They go to
spiritdoula.com.
spiritdoula.com. And you can also get to the same website from kimcolella.com, but Colella has a lot of confusing L's in it. So go with Spirit Doula.
Oh, terrific, terrific. And those will be in the show notes below.
Thank you.
And thank you, Kim. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing life and in book form and on this podcast and with the world, with
Thank
the
you.
world.
Thank you.
I I I do, just as I was saying earlier, there are no um coincidences. We're all meant to meet. We're all meant to share. Some of those meetings might not be all that grand, but they are learning experiences if we allow them to be.
Thank you. Is it possible to add another thing to the show notes still?
I would love that. Yes.
Because I would like to offer a gift to your audience,
Oh,
your
wonderful.
followers, which is a guided meditation that I did for amplifying our light. And I use this meditation often before I have a difficult conversation, or before I'm going to be speaking, or when I'm anxious and I have to make a big decision. This is a very simple meditation that I use. And so I'd like to offer it to your people.
Thank you. That is so generous. So yes, the it's a URL that they can
Yeah,
listen
it'll
to.
take them to a landing page at my webpage.
Okay.
My webpage, just with a little slash book promo or something. I'll
Okay.
get it and send it to you this after, within the next hour. I'll send it to you so you can add it.
Fantastic. And those will be in the show notes as well. So, Kim Colella, spirit doula, beautiful woman inside and out.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for our time together. And listeners, be sure to reach out, listen to that meditation, and get her book. Where can they get their book? On Amazon, on your
They can,
website?
yes, the ebook you can get on Amazon only, but the print book you can get at your local bookstores. They can order it for you if they don't have it on hand. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it on my website. I'll make sure you get a copy.
Awesome.
You want to
Awesome.
order a copy, we'll make sure we get you a copy.
Well, I'm certainly getting a copy of it because it is, she is an amazing woman. And you can hear that in her and you can see that on YouTube. So be sure to like and subscribe and share with others. Share with others because our marketing budget here is your word of mouth. So share and also, if you like this episode with Kim, please leave a comment and there will be a special prize. Once a week, I pull uh, something from all of the people who have left comments, and they will get something special, whether it be a download or um, something very in the healing realm to make your life awesome. So, thank you again for being my guest, Kim. And until next time, everyone, be awesome.